Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
This is Amini Swedi and
Zulfa Kasim.
you're listening to the Murid Talks podcast.
Okay, welcome again, Brother Amini.
Thank you very much.
How are you today?
I'm a little bit under the weather, but
Yeah, it seems like it's something that is happening to everyone currently.
yeah, the weather is a bit in transition, I would say.
Like all mystics.
Exactly, like all mystics. Yes.
But today we're not going to talk about that, right?
Yeah, it's not about the weather.
Yeah.
It's something that causes the weather.
Inshallah.
Something above the weather.
Today we want to talk with you and everyone about religion. First things first, what is religion?
Well, different people have defined religion differently. And as with anything in language, right, there isn't one kind of definition or a consensus of what religion is. But I would say I subscribe to the school of René Guénon.
Okay.
And his exposition and definition of religion seems a little bit more tangible to me. And he says a religion is defined by three things. One, a doctrine or a dogma in which the exposition of divinity, cosmology, ontology is found within, like being and the nature of being, how did being start, etc. And the second thing is a moral code, a law, a sharia in Arabic, and in it the do's and don'ts. And it is formulated in a commanding way. It's more of a compulsive law. Obviously, law is compulsive, right? And so it's the do's and don'ts. And these do's and don'ts, the moral code or the ethical code, is meant to lead man into a certain straight way of living, right? The third thing is the rituals. And these are repetitive actions also meant to lead man into a certain straight path. And these rites, rituals, they have a certain efficacy, a certain effective nature on man. They change man from one state to another state. And whether known or unknown to that man, the rituals are an integral part of religion. And so you have these three things that when they come together, you have what we might call religion. And so a doctrine, a dogma, a moral code, and rituals. And in rituals, here you might find prayers, meditations, fasting, etc. Yeah.
Okay. When you say moral code, you mentioned there's a compulsivity. Of course, I'm referring to Islam here when I say that we are taught that religion is not compulsed upon a person. It's a choice. Okay, so what demands a person to follow these laws that are made? And are these laws made by man to make up that religion, or is it something divinely given?
That's a very good question, actually. When we talk about moral code, that moral code is specific to a certain religion. And so the moral code of Islam might not necessarily be similar to the moral code of Judaism, for example. Now, when we're talking about there is no compulsion in religion, there is no compulsion in entering or subscribing to a certain religion. But once you've subscribed to that religion, you are compelled to follow the law of that religion. Obviously, you have a choice to say, I don't want to follow that law. But then why are you adhering or why are you a subscriber of that particular path, right? And so it's like being employed in certain company. There is,
Rules and regulations for it.
And so why be part of the company if you...
I think most of us are not into religion because of that. At least I hear people, they drop down or they say religion means nothing because of the restricting, limiting. They feel like these moral codes aren't always per human rights or a person has a choice. I mean, I could not do this and I could still survive.
Well, that's interesting because if you think about it deeply, human beings always are there to a certain law, whether it's the law of what we call the law of the jungle, right? Like the life that we live in. There's certain...
The laws of nature.
The laws of nature, the law of the government. There's always a law. And it's illusory to think that you can escape from having a certain law that you're bound to. Now, whether you choose to be bound to the law of Islam or the law of some other, country or nation or group or cult.
Or
idea, that's up to you. Now, obviously, laws are restricting. That is their nature, right? You have an inclination to do something, you're told that's not the right thing to do. That's the nature of law. It is meant to restrict people. It is meant to shape you. Now, without being shaped, you cannot take a specific nature, I would say. Religion wants you to attain a certain end. Now, for you to attain to that end, you have to be shaped, right? It's like a potter, right? And he has clay. Clay is just clay. Put it with water, it's muddy, nothing's there. There's no shape, there's nothing. But the potter wants to create a pot, right? And so he has to kind of squish it and mold it, right? And hence, that's God with us. We are the clay. We are, mushy and muddy. But then from us, something beautiful can come out. And so we have to be shaped by that religion, by the law.
Okay.
And that answers your question, actually. The right moral code has to be divinely ordained because man cannot lead himself, right?
Yeah.
Man as man. I'm not talking man as, divine. I'm talking as man in this world right here, the world of form, the world of multiplicity, the world of errors. And so because there is a distance, there is a division, illusory as it may be, this division entails a certain miscommunication or a certain hiddenness, a certain veil, right? That we're not seeing certain things. And so God, who sees all things, tells us, I know what state you're in. And so I have to communicate myself to you. Hence the prophets come. And these prophets are saintly people. And they communicate to us from the divine what we should do, what we should not do, what rituals we can do to become closer to the divine.
Okay.
And who that divine is, and hence the dogma or the doctrine. Okay. And different religions have different, doctrines. And so the exposition of God and the ultimate reality in Hinduism is so different from the one in Islam. The one in Islam is so different from the one in Christianity, for example. But they're all talking about the same ultimate reality. And why is there different, doctrines? Why not just one doctrine? Why not just one religion? Again, because of the nature of the world. The world is divided. We have races, we have different colors, we have multiplicity. And so even though ultimately the core, the essence is one, and that is God, the forms are different, right? It's like talking about human beings. The human being is just one. If you really think about it, the human being, it's just one being.
Yeah, but
there's different people, right?
Out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it would be not in the nature of God to make this possible. I mean,
obviously,
God is one who never creates one thing twice.
Exactly.
And we come at different stages of existence, different generations. So each generation requires something that is similar to its state at that time. So Christianity, it came at the time that Christianity was needed.
Exactly.
And so as Judaism and so as Islam.
Exactly.
Of course, I would like to know the difference between tradition and religion, because they come very close.
That's a very good question, actually. I know I say this a lot. It's a very good question. But yeah, it is actually a very good question.
I do get flattered myself that, okay, so I am smart.
MashaAllah. Tradition vis-a-vis religion. Again, I subscribe to the Rene Guénon school.
Yeah, he is a good man and a very deep thinker. I would advise anyone, though, to be careful. Rene Guénon is one of those writers that are strictly powerful in their ideas and their understanding. And when you read his books, just try to be gentle with yourself and take it slow, but continue.
So Rene Guénon again went back to the definition. And he's very keen on definitions. He says if you want to understand anything, you have to know the correct definition of something.
It is true. It is very true.
And he goes back to what we call etymology, like the source of the word, right? And so tradition meant something transmitted. It's a transmission, some sort of a chain. Now, again, traditionally, what tradition meant is this divine chain of thought or divine chain of knowledge. So something that has its source from the divine, revealed unto man, and that revelation is then transmitted throughout the ages to other people. And that is tradition. Tradition is not about customs, it's not about culture, it's not about norms. All that is not tradition. So tradition, what it actually means, according to the Rene Guénon school, is that it is a divinely revealed knowledge. Ideology, call it what you may, but then it's transmitted through a certain chain down to us.
So you'd say Hinduism, Taoism.
Exactly.
These aren't particular religions, they're more like traditions.
Exactly. Hinduism, Taoism, Buddhism. Again, from how we define religion, they might not necessarily be religions, but they are traditions.
Sort of enters in that thing. I mean, it is being a chain after all. Like we receive the understandings and the teachings, and the teachers come from a chain of teachers, right?
Exactly. Sufism is a tradition.
Okay.
And the way divine knowledge is manifested in the world is through tradition. So there is a chain, there's a link, because something has to link you back to the source. And so, for example, the Sufis take the chain all the way back to the Prophet Muhammad, and the Prophet Muhammad all the way back to God, and the Christians all the way back to Jesus, and Jesus back to God.
Okay.
Right? The Buddhists back to Buddha, Buddha back to God.
Okay, so you can take both roads, tradition or religion, to reach God.
Interesting.
Okay. Okay, we are having a lot of interesting today.
Yeah.
Okay. Because, I mean, if they're all sourced back to the one, a person could choose one or the other depending on their inclinations, For instance, a person isn't very, getting Islam. Maybe there are too many laws, or there are too many people who have polluted the idea for him or her. So you know what they say, for me, Taoism makes sense, or Confucianism makes sense. So let me take that road, as long as I know there's a God in me that I have to search. Let me take that road and reach God.
Ideally, yes, you could take whatever path you want to take, but realistically, not quite so.
How?
So what Rene says is that different religions or traditions are meant to morph people differently.
Okay.
And so the Hindu tradition is more disposed for the Hindu people. If you're not a Hindu, the Hindu tradition isn't for you.
Okay.
And because it is revealed unto the Hindu people, it is more disposed for them. And so for them to kind of align themselves to tradition, it is easier than it is for a foreigner who's not a Hindu to just go in and say, I'm going to be a Hindu today.
Okay. Same as you would say Confucianism.
Or Taoism. It's for the Chinese people. If you're not Chinese.
Or Asian in that aspect.
In that aspect. Or Buddhism, for example. You can, I, as an African, can just go, I don't have the disposition.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is that the later religions, because if you look at Hinduism, Taoism, even Confucianism, even Buddhism, right? They're very old.
Zoroastrianism.
Zoroastrianism, way old, right? Though Hinduism is believed to be one of the oldest traditions.
Okay.
the oldest traditions are less universal than the newer traditions. And so, for example, if you look at Christianity and Islam, they're more universal. They're more encompassing of many people. And because it's because of the times.
Okay.
Now, we are getting more and more towards multiplicity. And so these two religions cover a larger base, right? And so if you look at Christianity, it has spread all the way from its epicenter, which is, Jerusalem, right, to the entirety of the Western world, for example, Rome, all the way to America, right, down to Africa, even to the Far Eastern countries. Not as much in the Far Eastern countries, but it's been there. Similar to Islam, right? It's spread, from the Arab countries way down to Africa and even to the West. Not as much in the West, but it's there also. And so what then Christianity or Islam does, it kind of merges with the local people. For example, now, the Islam that morphs itself with its people. If you go to Senegal, for example, the Islam there is quite different from the Islam in Tanzania.
Or from the Islam in Malaysia.
It's still Islam.
But it's in a different
But it's so different.
garment.
Yeah, it has a different aroma, right? And it's interesting because, again, it's kind of a mirror imaging of the oldest traditions, the newest traditions.
It's true.
They were universal in a certain sense. It's so interesting.
No, I get that in a way that, like, the more back you go, first, I think the way I see it, it's more of a tradition.
Yeah.
It's like people they didn't need much laws or much to be told
precisely
about things. They were so naturally inclined. So you have concepts like Taoism. A person's just telling me that non-action is the way, and what the hell is non-action?
Exactly. It's hard for you to understand
right now, but at the time it would have been so simple because people are just so in tune with their surroundings, with nature, and with the divine, which is one and the same. And so you find people, they just naturally walked into it as they go. But the more we progress into this current world, the more materialistic, the more detached we are to nature, the more we need a much more firmer reminder of the way. So religion becomes like this roadmap that you still have to be reminded that this is the way. Don't go too far away from it.
Don't deviate.
Yeah, and as you can see, the older religions were much more spiritually inclined.
Yeah, they're much more metaphysical. Yes.
Yeah, metaphysical. Yeah, that's the right word. Not that saying that currently it's just that the idea is not very open as compared to before.
Exactly.
Because I'm currently reading about the Taoism books. And they say things so abstractly,
Very symbolically.
Very symbolically. And it takes a minute for me to sit and, think of it, read, listen to other people just to compare it. So I get it. Like, right, the more the religions that came, the more universal they become, the more expansive, but also the more hidden spirituality was, in a way, I see it.
Of course, that's exactly how it is. In that, the more the ages go, the more we move further from the center. Think of the sun and the rays, right? And so the rays that are closer to the sun are the brightest. And the more kind of the sun's rays move towards the darkness, the more they fade out, right? And so it's the same thing. The oldest ages were more attuned to spirituality because of their affinity, their closeness to the divine, in time and in space and in however way you want to keep it. It doesn't mean there weren't deviations. Obviously, there were deviations. Hence, the prophets came and told the people, don't do this, don't do that. But laws were not as codified. It's even absurd to even talk about a law because anyone who deviated from the natural way of things was seen as, again, deviant. Why wouldn't you conform with the law? Not even the law. Why wouldn't you conform with nature? Right? But as time went, as we're moving further and further away from the source, from the light, things start to fade out and multiplicity reigns. What we call the reign of quantity. Rene says that. And so things start splitting up and divisions start happening. Multiplicity reigns. And with that, again, our closeness and affinity to the divine, to the source, to the center, to the unit and unity, herein comes our veil. We're more veiled and more veiled from the ultimate reality, and we conform less and less with the way reality is. And we need a reminder, a harsher reminder. Like, don't do this. If you do this, you go to hell. It's very harsh. It's very straightforward, right? And again, this is where people start seeing religion as kind of,
Constricting,
and confining. But there's a reason. Again, it's because we have a lesser disposition
to the center.
Exactly.
Or to the divine.
To conform with that center. Okay. And that's why we need that, molding, the Sharia, the law.
In that essence, can I ask what is the difference between the moral code and virtue?
So, if you follow the moral code, you attain virtues. So a virtue is a state. Also, I would define it. So if we say you're virtuous, you kind of emit a certain light. So you are, for example, patient, forgiving, loving, compassionate. That's something that you kind of emanate. Now, what a moral code does, it tells you, be patient.
Okay.
So you have to learn it. It's something that you're told to do.
To do.
But then after you do it, and then become second nature, you become virtuous.
Okay.
So what morality does is it teaches us to be virtuous, or even compels us to attain to a state of virtue. And so the older traditions taught of virtue not as a law. They just taught it as this is what man should be.
In a way, it's like morality or the moral codes is telling you or showing you something from outside to within.
Exactly.
And virtue is from within to outside.
Exactly.
Now, why won't a person just, decide? Why don't I just start from myself inside? Why do I need to go through the whole moral code ritual process of religion? Let me just be spiritual.
Disposition.
Okay.
The farther we are from the center, the more we are indisposed to just take things from within to outside. Because our mental state, physical state, is more inclined towards multiplicity, towards quantity.
Towards the material.
Towards the material. We need something that will take us from that back inside, right? And so, hence in comes the law. And a lot of people are indisposed in that they cannot even think of this common center, this ultimate reality in a metaphysical sense. So for them, things take a material form and shape, right? And so what religion comes and does is that it says, okay, if you want to conform more and more with that divine, you have to pray, right? And you have to fast, and you have to give out alms, and you have to go to pilgrimage. And you have to do this and not do that. Whilst in reality, if you lived way back then,
or
right?
you understood.
Or you understand, not even understood, or understand things of a metaphysical nature right now. Like people who are initiated into the esoteric orders, be it Sufism or Hasidism, Kabbalah, even Taoism, they understand that things don't come out in. They understand things come in out. The more you conform with the ultimate reality, the more you reflect and emanate what that ultimate reality truly is, which is good, right? And so it's not about learning to be virtuous, but it's about
being.
Exactly, being and attuning yourself with that ultimate being until you become you're annihilated in yourself, in your individuality, and all that comes out of you is the divine emanation.
The ultimate. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That's.
And that's how esotericism is different from exotericism.
For me, all this just represents, or is represented in the duality of things.
Yeah.
You know, everything comes in pairs, it seems. And the ultimate aim is unification of those pairs, is to find the one within the pairdom of it.
Exactly. So if you think about it, and why religion is necessary, or even a formal tradition, right? So if you speak about Hinduism or Buddhism or Taoism, it's a formal tradition. Now, the reason we have that is the reason we have a body, right? We, in reality, are spiritual beings. We're not just material beings, but we have materia. We have bodies, right? And bodies conform to a law, laws of gravity, the laws of pain, the laws of whatever you want to think, growth and expansion, and yeah. And so if you were to burn your body right now, if you take a flame and burn, it will burn. And so these two things go hand in hand, exotericism, esotericism, right? For example, particularly to the Sufis, you cannot be a Sufi if you're not a Muslim. That's impossible. Sufism is not other than Islam, and people have to know this. Anyone who's a Sufi is a Muslim, and so they follow the Sharia like anybody else. Right? They follow the exoteric side of things, but what they have then is a disposition to understand things of a metaphysical nature, in that it's not just about dogma. It's not just about saying, oh, you know, the ultimate reality is this or that, is written this or that, but about being in unity and kind of uniting with that ultimate reality, right? That's what esotericism takes us to, right? And so we still have bodies, hence we still need exotericism, but we also spirit, and then through esotericism, we realize our true nature and, you know, our spiritual nature.
One more question. Must you be a Muslim to be a Sufi?
Yes. You have to be a Muslim to be a Sufi. You have to be a Christian to be a Hesychast. You have to be a Jew to be in the Kabbalah.
Okay. I did hear, though, that there are certain tariqas that a non-Muslim can join a Sufi sect or a Sufi tradition.
Believe it or not, they become Muslims.
Okay, at the end of the day.
Yeah. Because again, one of the key things in a Sufi tariqah is the proclamation of faith, La ilaha illallah. Once you've proclaimed La ilaha illallah, you're a Muslim, right? And so, okay, some might not follow the moral code or, you know, the Sharia, but again, it's very essential to the life of a Muslim and the life of a Sufi to begin with. These two things go hand in hand. You know, and why do they go hand in hand? Because the path is extremely dangerous, believe it or not.
Okay.
You might get in over your head.
It is true.
And without something to balance you, which is one, your master, your sheikh, two, your brotherhood or sisterhood, your people, your co-disciples, and the third, without the Sharia, without the law, how to be, how not to be, you might lose track, right? Because you're delving into mysterious realities. And in mysterious realities, there's things that are supernal, that are above the angels and the lights, but there are also things that are infernal, which are down, right? Things that are satanic, I would say. And so these things sometimes they might take similar shapes, you know, and that's why, for example, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ says, for example, if you see me in a dream, it's not the shaitan, for example, right? And so we know then that shaitan comes into people's dreams, right? And so similarly, shaitan, he's in the path. Right? He's there. He's waiting for people, right? And he's waiting to take them away. And so sometimes things that might take the form of a supernal nature. You might think, oh, these things are mystical and wow, wow, wow. But really they're infernal and they're satanic. And so one has to be extremely careful, hence the need of guidance.
I like how you mentioned that, because it's very, as you say, it's very easy to get in over your head. When you read mystical writings or you see or hear from them, people who are going through that road, it sounds so romantic, you know, and it's so desirous. I mean, you read poems from Rumi, for instance, and you're like, oh my God, I want to be this person today, you know?
Yes.
But it is very easy to turn into something completely opposite from it. And I think this is where a teacher, in a way, sort of religion represents a form of a teacher.
Exactly.
In a way that you need a light bringer, something to shed the light in that tunnel, which is full of uncertainties.
Exactly. And that's what the prophets were, right? The prophets were teachers, right? And yes, they brought the moral code, they brought the law, the Sharia, the exoteric side of things, but they also brought the esoteric. And they knew what kind of people had the disposition, who didn't have the disposition, who were better left to adhere to the exoteric side of things, and who were to be brought in and given the esoteric realities. And we mentioned the hadith last time from Abu Huraira that, you know, there's two kinds of knowledges that the Prophet Muhammad came with. One he gave to all the people, to the mass, and this is the exoteric, and the other one is the esoteric. And the esoteric is so dangerous in that if Abu Huraira was to talk about it, they would, you know, kill him.
Yeah.
Because it's so...
heretical.
In a sense, yes, heretical. Certain things don't necessarily adhere to the exoteric side of things, things that we're talking about. And so some things even we can't talk about in this podcast, for example. Not that we are trying to...
be this sect of elite
elite people
this
and
secret
secretive
code of
it's because you cannot talk about them.
Yeah, it's true. And it's not that you just can't talk about. It's like you literally can't.
You literally cannot talk about
you
it.
You cannot express it with words.
Exactly.
Because it's something very experiential.
Exactly.
And it is absolutely unique.
Exactly.
You know, and only a person going through that phase or that path can get an inkling. And sometimes, you know, it's just an inkling, because there are certain experiences that are just so above and beyond that not even your own fellow brothers and sisters in the path, they may not get you at the time, you know?
Exactly.
Until a certain understanding or Allah shows or unveils certain things. And in a way, a person will feel, okay, maybe I'm too dumb to understand this. It has nothing to do with intellect.
Nothing at all.
It has nothing to do with it. It is absolutely, as you said once, it's a grace. You know, you have no control or demand of it. You cannot demand, okay, God, I want now to be, you know, I want to get this. It is something that comes. But first, we have to respect religion, give it the strength and the importance that we have to give it, and try to be humble with ourselves and to understand each other's. And I think this is where most of our problems come today. We've fragmented everything. Religion has become also a victim in it. We fragment other religions, that they are not things you should need to understand or get to know. We fragment our own selves in the one religion that we so-called share. And so, for instance, Muslims, we have Shias and Sunnis have this and that. And, you know, there are all these fragmentations. But if you respect your religion, I think you can get the audacity and the decency to respect all other religions and start to come to understand. And slowly you start to understand that at the bottom of it all, it's one. It's one message. And I think this is a good first step to try to get through understanding a lot more. If it's mysticism, if it's just religion itself, whatever it is. But Allah or God is the one who would unfold it, depending on your intentions. So that's just my take.
Wow, you've summed it up really well. I think we can end the episode here.
Yeah. I hope everyone has enjoyed it, and thank you so much. I've learned a lot today.
Thank you as well, Sister Zulfa. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.